Less than a year ago, relations between Moscow and Ankara soured after a Turkish fighter jet shot down a Russian Su-24M bomber over the Turkish-Syrian border last November. Harsh words and hostilities ensued. Vladimir Putin warned of serious consequences. Today's loss for us was like a stab in the back delivered by the accomplices of terrorists. I cannot qualify what happened today as anything else. But reconciliation came about on the 27th of June in the form of a written expression of regret from President Erdogan. Moscow then lifted its sanctions on tourism, which by June 2016 had seen arrivals of Russian visitors to Turkey slump by 93% against June 2015. In the aftermath of July's failed coup, the West saw measures taken against suspected participants as overly severe, while Erdogan bemoaned the lack of backing offered from the EU. Putin, however, was the first to offer his support to the Turkish leader. On the 9th of August, Erdogan made a state visit to St. Petersburg to seal the rapprochement, while Europe looked on, worried that the migrant agreement with Turkey was in jeopardy.
Putin was one of the first leaders to call Erdogan, and he declared unconditional support for the Turkish government, the democratically elected government of Turkey, against the coup.
After Erdogan thanked Putin for his support, which he said meant a lot psychologically, the two committed to strengthening their economic cooperation to the tune of €90 billion a year. Russia has already commenced work on Turkey's first nuclear power station in Akuyu in the south. Turkey is not rich in hydrocarbons, and President Erdogan has said he hopes the plant, which is costing an estimated €18 billion, will eventually provide 10% of Turkey's energy. The two countries are also aiming to reaffirm their commitment to completing the Russian-Turkish gas pipeline TurkStream that could deliver 31.5 million cubic metres of Russian gas per year to Europe via the Black Sea.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in Turkey to attend the 23rd World Energy Congress in Istanbul at the invitation of the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The two leaders will discuss bilateral relations, including energy cooperation, with a special emphasis on the Turkish Stream natural gas pipeline project.
Given the current situation, we believe a freeze or a cutting of the production of oil is the only way to preserve the stability of the energy sector and accelerate a rebalancing of the market. Russia is prepared to joint measures limiting production.
Last month, OPEC agreed to a surprise output cut in hopes of lifting rock-bottom oil prices. Russia is not a member of the oil cartel, but it pumps as much oil as the world's top producer, Saudi Arabia. At the same Congress, Erdogan announced that work on the TurkStream natural gas pipeline project is underway.
Oil prices have shot up to their highest level so far this year after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced Russia is ready to join OPEC's output cap. Brent crude, the international benchmark, hit a one-year high, up more than 3% to slightly over $53 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude oil futures were also up 3% plus to more than $51. OPEC agreed at an informal meeting last month to discuss freezing output when it holds its formal meeting in Vienna at the end of November.
Now, the Russian president says Moscow and Ankara want an end to the bloodshed in Syria, as well as the implementation of a UN proposal in Aleppo.
Both Russia and Turkey stand for the earliest cessation of bloodshed in Syria. In Russia, we think that the switch to a political settlement must happen as soon as possible. We suppose that everybody who wants peace should support this proposal.
Well, Putin made the remarks following talks with his Turkish counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in Istanbul. He added that Russia and Turkey have agreed to do everything possible to deliver humanitarian aid to the flashpoint city of Aleppo.
In a further sign of Russia's long-term commitment to Syria, Moscow says that it plans to establish a permanent naval base at the Syrian port of Tartus. Russian Deputy Defense Minister Nikolai Pankov says necessary documents are already prepared and are in the process of being approved. The naval base sits on the site of an existing facility that Russia has leased from Syria. Moscow has been beefing up its military presence in that country. It deployed the advanced S-300 surface-to-air missiles in Tartus last week. This as the U.S. has stepped up anti-Syria rhetoric. Russia inherited the naval facility at Tartus when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. The base is of immense strategic importance, as is Russia's sole foothold in the Mediterranean Sea.
Vladimir Putin moving nuclear-capable missiles to the border with Poland and Lithuania. A military maneuver that may violate international treaties, but Putin sees it as a show of strength on NATO's doorstep, as Washington and Moscow head toward the brink of a new Cold War.
A U.S. Navy destroyer drew missile fire, take a look at that there, while patrolling the Red Sea just off the coast of Yemen yesterday. Although the missiles did not hit the warship, a U.S. defense official says they were definitely targeted. Iranian-backed rebels claim responsibility for the attack, marking yet another close call involving an American ship in that region.
Well, I think this is what happens when you embolden the largest sponsor of state terrorism in the world. The Houthi rebels in Yemen, this is no surprise to anyone who's lived and followed the region, are financed, trained, and equipped by the Iranians. So the U.S. government has not come out and said that Iran is behind the attack, but what they're saying is that it looks like the attack happened from entities that, again, are financed, trained, and equipped by the Iranians.
So we basically empowered Iran. We did this deal with them, and this is the way they thank us?
Well, and the real question for me is, Trish, where is the red line? So the administration has shown that they're willing to excuse any behavior by Iran in order to keep this deal in place. But how much is too much so they can their proxies can shoot at our ships?
And what if they actually...
Palm Springs, California is grieving tonight for 2 police officers ambushed on Saturday as they answered a routine call.
Growing memorial in Palm Springs is dominated by large photos of the 2 murdered police officers. Leslie Zarebny, 27, mother of a 4-month-old daughter, and Jose Gilbert Vega, 63, who was due to retire in December. Chief Brian Reyes leads a department and a city in mourning.
If there's ever a time to pray for Palm Springs PD, it's now.
The 2 officers were on a call to a domestic disturbance when they were gunned down through a closed door. The sound of dozens of gunshots was captured by a security camera. After a 12-hour battle with police, an alleged gang member, John Felix, 26, was forced out. There was no apparent motive for the shooting. It's becoming more common.
There's an awful lot of hate right now. Hate for officers, government in general, just for simply wearing a uniform.
New tool launched by social media giant Facebook has reportedly turned the network into something of a black market. A feature called Marketplace was designed to let users buy and sell goods, but instead it got flooded with illegal listings.
Buying an AK-47, drugs, or worse, and all on Facebook. It may sound strange, but you could do all of that and more just using this iPad. Monday morning, Facebook Marketplace was launched. The social media giant wanted to counter Craigslist and Backpage by setting up a new sales app. They got more than they bargained for. Within moments, Facebook Marketplace was flooded with some, shall we say, very interesting sales offers. Let's take a look at what we can find here. Very, very cute hedgehog, just very, very adorable. Then, oh, look at this. We got a handgun, only $150. You can buy a nice handgun there. Oh, and apparently some very high-quality cannabis right there. Monday night, Mary Koo gave a statement on behalf of Facebook apologizing for all the illegal content and saying that Facebook was working to identify and remove anything that violated its policies. It seems that the latest dominion in Mark Zuckerberg's internet empire is turning out to be full of surprises.
Here's a rather depressing story and a number for you. Nearly 7 in 10 Americans have less than $1,000 saved, cash. Less than 1,000. 7 out of 10 of us, Ash.
Even worse, 34% of those Americans don't even have a dime in savings. 35% less than 1,000. And what's interesting about this survey is that not every income group was worse off than the other. And in other words, those that took in $100,000 to $149,000 a year, 44% of them had less than 1,000 in savings.
Hold on. If you make between 100 and 150,000 bucks a year,
44% of that group
hadn't got $1,000.
Nope. And then 150,000 plus, 29% had less than 1,000.
Todd Horwitz, I heard you rumbling away in the background there. What do you make of this?
That's that great program that has been brought to us by President Obama. That's all those 10 million jobs we've seen growing. That's everything that they've talked about, and what a wonderful job they've done with 1% growth, if they're lucky, with tons of debt, and nothing really to show for it, except for a bunch of companies that have gotten bigger by buying back their stock, borrowing cheap money. So it's that great growth pattern that we've been into now.
Yeah, that was sarcasm, if I'm not mistaken.
The San Andreas Fault in California is long overdue for a major earthquake, like more than 100 years overdue. But scientists just made a discovery that might tell us why the fault has been so quiet. It's called the Salton Trough Fault, and it lies along the northeastern edge of the Salton Sea in Southern California. The fault line is underwater, so scientists didn't find it until recently. Scientists believe the Salton Trough could be absorbing strain from San Andreas. That might explain why a major earthquake hasn't occurred along the San Andreas in more than 300 years. And Southern California has been waiting for the big one. A series of small earthquakes earlier this year caused worry among residents and scientists. The big one is a hypothetical earthquake with a magnitude predicted to be greater than 7. Southern Californians have anticipated such a quake for a long time.
A series of 3 earthquakes rattled the Oregon coast Sunday, and while the state has not experienced a major earthquake recently, experts warn a massive quake is on the horizon.
Lee, when you think earthquakes, you may think California, but experts are warning a magnitude 9 earthquake is overdue in Oregon. And I was told many of us don't take the threat as seriously as we should.
Oregon, we're not used to being considered earthquake country, but we are, and we're learning that that's the case.
While earthquakes might not be a top concern for many Oregonians, experts warn the threat is very real.
The Cascadia subduction zone is the earthquake's been getting a lot of media lately, and it's a 9.0 just like they've had in Japan about 5 years ago. It'll be major shaking across the western portion of the state, a tsunami.
They say it's not a matter of if, but when.
Scientists believe there's a nearly 40% chance of a magnitude 8 or 9 hitting in the next 50 years.
It's most definitely a catastrophic event, and there's just a significant amount of bridges that aren't structurally capable of surviving an earthquake of the magnitude that they're anticipating.
Scientists say that while the coast will feel the brunt of the physical effects, the aftermath will greatly affect Central Oregon. Experts say the threat has been getting more media attention lately, but the level of awareness still is not where it needs to be.
I don't think that Oregonians in general understand exactly how bad it's going to be.
Yet another aftershock hit Korea's southeastern city of Gyeongju on Monday night. The magnitude 3.3 tremor hit some 10 kilometers southwest of the city shortly before 11 p.m. No damage or casualties have been reported. The meteorological agency says it was the 470th aftershock recorded since the city was rocked by a magnitude 5.8 earthquake in mid-September. That was the most powerful quake even recorded in Korea.
Hurricane Sandy caused record-high water levels when it came ashore in the northeastern United States. But researchers working with new climate projections say we might see flooding this bad more often. Scientists combined historical data and models for future sea levels and storms. Together, the numbers suggest the New York coast could experience Sandy-level flooding as much as 17 times more frequently in the next century. The severity of the flooding largely depends on 2 factors: the level of the sea when a storm hits and the storm surge that pushes water up and inland. NASA measures sea levels based on changes from 1993 when it started keeping track. When Sandy hit New York, sea levels had risen 2.72 inches since 93. That trend is expected to continue as more sea ice melts. Going on this data alone, the new model suggests floods like Sandy's could become more than 4 times more frequent. By the end of the century, they might occur every 100 years or so instead of 2 or 3 times a millennium. It's harder to be certain of the effects of a storm surge. Wind speeds, the size of the storm, and the tides can all change how much water gets pushed around. But factoring in the surge makes things a lot more dire. The models show in the worst-case scenario, where New York is taking direct hits from storms, heavy floods could be as much as 17 times more frequent. And the stronger storms are more likely.
The storm is gone, but the disaster is growing. Tonight, President Obama declared a major disaster in North Carolina, where hundreds are trapped by floodwaters from Hurricane Matthew. The storm killed at least 25 people in the southeast, nearly half in North Carolina. More than 1 million homes and businesses in the south are without power, and some rivers are rising to record levels. Floodwaters topped a levee in Lumberton, North Carolina, and Mark Strassman is there.
All day on Martin Luther King Drive,
we got you, sir. Stand them up, bro.
Rescue teams from at least 5 states pulled out Lumberton's stranded residents.
Yeah.
The mayor told us 1,000 people needed rescuing, many of them elderly or physically unable to leave on their own. Choppers pulled some of them off rooftops, others came out 2 to a boat or by the truckload. Jamie and Alex Hayes were rescued with their son.
So you're glad to see these guys?
Yes,
Okay.
very
godsend. Godsend?
I believe I've been in town all my life. That's 52 years. I've never seen it like this. Never. It's a lake now.
Matthew dumped 15 inches of rain here over the weekend. The nearby Lumber River swelled to 24 feet, almost 3 times its average, swamping the city of 20,000 people.
We woke up, I was that deep in water. Had to get on top of the apartments and sleep out there.
You slept on the roof?
Slept on the roof.
Tressica Oxendine and daughter Tressie only had time to stuff 3 trash bags.
My water's that deep in the house, I lost everything.
Everything?
Everything but what I just brought on me. Some clothes and a blanket and a pillow.
More than 100 motorists lined up for gas in Lumberton. Flood relief is now Governor Pat McCrory's challenge.
This is going to be a prolonged hurricane for us, even though the skies are blue.
Lumberton is in for a long week. The river isn't expected to crest until Friday.
Mark, where are all these people going?
Scott, many of them have no place to go. This side of the city is lower income and congested. Finding shelters for people gets harder when buildings have no power and no water. About 800 folks are in shelters now, but the mayor told me today, Scott, he's looking to open more shelters.
Despite widespread devastation in Haiti, hundreds of believers headed straight to church Sunday to give thanks. Even after losing loved ones and homes, Haitian survivors picked their way through the rubble of their broken country to sing praise and pray in damaged churches. Some gathered under open skies after Matthew ripped away roofs and even walls of their sanctuaries. Meanwhile, over in the Bahamas, churches were also hit hard by Matthew.
It's a disaster as far as the building is concerned. Everything is out. It's finished. So we are trusting the Lord to make a way, and I know He will make a way. For all things work together for good.